Hello and welcome to a slightly different edition of Performance Check. My name is Rob, and today I'm going to be going over the rough outline and details of the order known as the Magisterium that appears in the Lorekeepers campaign that I'm running on my channel, and that exists within the Nine Kingdoms, the world in which that campaign is set. The reason I am doing this is to inform those who will be playing in an upcoming one-shot that I'll be running based around the Magisterium. Working title is Hexecution. I'm just proud of the pun. It's not really a pun, it's more of a... Anyway, the Magisterium is an order devoted to the control and regulation of arcane forces in the Nine Kingdoms. They're comprised of spell wards, mystic knights, arc wizards. It is their sworn duty to uphold their severe regulations that they maintain with brutal efficiency. All of this in the name of the God King, the Seneschal, who is the ruler of the Nine Kingdoms, the one who united the Nine Kingdoms under his rule. Nearly all of them. The Magisterium have a motto. Magic is chaos. Chaos is death. That is their mantra. Those are the words that they live by. They see magic as something that needs to be contained and controlled due to a significant event that occurred long ago in the Nine Kingdoms. I won't go into that because I consider that to be spoiler territory. I like to have a lot of my lore revealed in-game. I'm not really accustomed to speaking about it openly. But you get the gist. Something cataclysmic happened because of magic. And because of this, the Magisterium was formed. And with that chaos, there came a lot of death and destruction. So that is why they say those words. And it is the words that they mutter in their sleep as they dream of arcane forces that threaten them on a daily basis. Now, I'm going to talk about the classes. This is kind of mechanically, but this is obviously working towards me running a one-shot, so I do need to talk about what classes are going to be available when role-playing a character who is aligned with the Magisterium. The majority of them work, but there are some that don't. I'm going to talk about the ones that do work. I'm sure people could probably argue their case, but generally speaking, I've gone through the classes and have written a few words on how the ones that I've chosen work and why, and how they could be implemented into a game based around the Magisterium. So, the classes. Number one is Bards. Bards are an interesting one, and I really like the idea of bards often being utilised as heralds of the Magisterium, the Magisterium's will. I like to think that maybe even their class name would be heralds rather than bard. Their skills, their aptitude with words, they lend themselves easily to more of the political structure of the Magisterium. There's obviously an awful lot of hunting down the rogue arcane, but this agenda needs to be enforced on all fronts. And in society, I like the idea of the heralds, the bards, being this voice, this charismatic voice that assures everyone that everything is fine. You're entirely safe from the perils of the arcane. Fighters. So every organization needs muscle. Fighters are that in particular. The Eldritch Knight. I love the Eldritch Knight, and I believe it would be the favoured class of the particular division of the Magisterium known as the Mystic Knights. They basically combine their mastery of martial prowess with magic, which awards them quite a deadly versatility, really. Like, it's pretty handy. It's pretty handy indeed. You may be wondering as I'm going through this, well, if they regulate magic, why are they allowing magic within their own ranks? The idea is that within their teachings, they're teaching all about that. Yeah, magic. It's a part of life. It's a life force. You can't just get rid of it. We can't just ban it. It's there. You know, it has been there for thousands and thousands of years. There's no feasible way of getting rid of it. So we're going to have to work with what we've got. So the Magisterium teach strict codes on how magic should be utilized. I thought I should mention that before I continue. So that's the fighter with the Eldritch Knight as a basis of, you know, what could be, you know, utilized if you wanted to be a fighter in the Magisterium. The Paladin. Now, the Paladin is a tricky one because the Paladin is actually a divine class, as I'm sure most of you watching this video understand, because they often swear fealty to a god or at least a holy force of some type. Not always, but mostly. Now, the Paladins are the only divine class that are going to appear in the ranks of the Magisterium. Classes like clerics and things like that are more catered to another organization that is in the Nine Kingdoms known as the Observance, the collective of civilized faiths, or the Observance. But I'm not going to go into that because those are details for another time. So anyway, the Paladin, the only divine class to appear within the ranks of the Magisterium. This is due to their powerful sense of will against the tides of magic, which suits their, frankly, very deadly abilities perfectly. And paladins who find themselves in the Magisterium generally are being watched. They are being groomed. They are essentially destined to become witch hunters. If you're a good paladin, if you are decent at your job, you are going to essentially be, you know, easily picked to be a witch hunter. That brings me on to witch hunters. There is an ex-witch hunter within the Lorekeepers known as Marius Hexenheim, played by Lloyd, the Jarl DM. Played wonderfully by him, in fact. Lloyd has a really good understanding of the medieval hunter of heretics. And that's generally what the witch hunters are. They are a division all on their own, and they generally operate with their own code, slightly separate from the Magisterium, but they do work with them, and generally are the most efficient fighting force against the rogue arcane. They are feared for, if the Magisterium is militant, the witch hunters are, you know, twice that. But yeah, paladins. Paladins are generally brought into the Magisterium so they can then be, you know, upgraded, promoted into the witch hunters. Rangers. Rangers are born hunters. They're perfect. They find themselves at home within the ranks of the, you know, the Magisterium, sometimes known as arcane wardens. They essentially put their skills of tracking, hunting, to really keen use against apostates, because they're just good at tracking people down, and they do have a handle on their own type of magic as well. I suppose it's the ranger hunter that I'm thinking of mostly, but generally they're really quite good at that. So they're welcome with open arms. They often perform duties as scouts, for example. They would probably be the ones that don't outright attack apostates, but find out where there's a compound of them, perhaps, a collection of them, and then they bring reinforcements to help them make the kill. Or they just make the kill anyway, if they think they can take them, which is probably often the case. Rogues are great, and they're sneaky. and the arcane trickster is probably one of my favorites in terms of putting these classes into the Magisterium. I love the idea of arcane tricksters being part of the Magisterium because basically the rogue arcane would find it difficult to cast spells and defeat people that remain unseen and that are tricksy and wily, and basically until it's too late, they wouldn't know what had hit them if a rogue or an arcane trickster basically got the drop on them. Arcane tricksters basically make very competent infiltrators, and I like to think that they are very much the spies of the Magisterium. They can essentially, I like to think that they could be deep cover spies that actually infiltrate within the ranks of the rogue arcane. And yeah, I think that could be a pretty interesting element in a game, to have someone who is basically just waiting to rat you out at the right opportunity, and they're using their own magical wiles to fool them. And they can spy on the arcane enemy from a distance, or within their own ranks. They can do both. So I really like the idea of that. Now moving on to the very much the magic-centric classes. So let's start with the sorcerer. Basically, sorcerers are the embodiment of untapped magical potential. Sorcerers are, in the Magisterium, are trained to hone their abilities because that unpredictability is not something that is looked on fondly at all. The power within them is basically described to them as a raging demon. It is one that must be controlled at all times for the good of the Magisterium. And it's a burden that they bear for their entirety of their service. They are considered to be born with sin, sorcerers. In fact, anyone who has magical ability within the Magisterium is considered to have been born with sin. There's very much a Catholic analogy kind of running through the Magisterium, that you may be born with this horrible power, but make good use of it, and you're okay. But if you don't, we have a problem. Warlocks. Warlocks are, again, problematic for the Magisterium, and they are often paired with Watchers. The Warlocks and the Watchers. These Watchers are basically people who are charged with accompanying an individual Warlock. So a Warlock will be given a Watcher, and the Watcher will be given express orders to essentially watch them. Warlocks basically make pacts with mysterious forces. Mysterious forces, in the Magisterium's mind, always lead to ruin. So that must be looked at very carefully. And a lot of the time, these pacts from these mysterious forces, these patrons, there's nothing they can do about it. Power coming from a different dimension, for example. There's only so much they can do about it. So they have the Warlocks with their own Watchers. And essentially, I like to imagine that if a Warlock lost it and was somehow compelled to act on behalf of their patron rather than the will of the Magisterium, the Watcher is there with a loaded crossbow bolt at the back of their head. So maybe not many people survive that long if they're a Warlock in the Magisterium, but they have their uses. And finally, of course, Wizards. Wizards are the epitome of magical teachings. Wizards control their power with cold calculation within the Magisterium. Those that show promise can rise to the position of an arch-wizard, and seminal leaders can become part of something that is known as the Endless Council. Wizards generally get a really cushy ride in the Magisterium. Their intelligence is praised. Their control is revered. They are basically the upper class within the Magisterium, and generally fill leadership roles and research roles. And the Endless Council is the main governing body within the Magisterium. They work closely with another group called the Deacons. The Deacons are the political face of the Magisterium that work with the Heralds quite a lot. The Deacons, I'd like you to imagine, are slimy, pale men that basically promote the anti-magic agenda. And are not to be trusted under any circumstances. Imagine Grima Wormtongue meets. I'm just trying to think of a politician that everyone watching this would understand and know about. Probably not British politics then. Let's not get into politics. Just a politician, okay? You know what I mean. Politics. I'm very tired. It's very early in the morning, by the way, I should point out. I'm doing this before I get on with the rest of my day, but I wanted to post this. I'm now going to very briefly touch on races that are accepted into the Magisterium. Now, I've tried to make it apparent within the Lorekeepers Chapter 1 and 2 that there are many racial tensions. The fact of the matter is, humans are the dominant species of the Nine Kingdoms. When I set out to make this world, I very much wanted it to be set in the twilight of basically the D&D era, if that makes any sense. The fact of the matter is that magical creatures are not as common as they were. Magic is now being controlled and regulated. Basically, this is the last hurrah of the age of magic. It's the end times. And I don't mean that so much as in an apocalyptic way. I mean it more in the sense that this is the last age of heroes. And I've been in love with this concept for a long time, and it does mean that many of the races have suffered tremendously when we get to this point. Humans are the dominant species. The forces of the elves are diminished. Elves are a part of the Magisterium. They still are regarded as well-versed with their understanding when it comes to magic, and because of that, powerful elves have powerful positions within the Magisterium, but not many. Dwarves. We haven't really come across any dwarves in the two games that have run for the Nine Kingdoms thus far. But suffice to say that they are introverts. They don't really like outsiders. They like to govern themselves. They keep themselves to themselves. Their stone doors are closed to all but their own. It could be on a rare occasion that a powerful dwarf could very much be a part of the Magisterium. Basically, if the merits that they bring to the table outweigh the racial problems that perhaps having a dwarf in the Magisterium would cause, then yeah, fine. But that would be very rare. In fact, I'm going to be open and say that most of the races, other than humans and elves, are going to have a hard time with trying to get into the Magisterium. The other races are not well liked. And when it comes to Dragonborn and Tieflings, they are so incredibly rare for different reasons that it would be unlikely you would come across either of them. And I'm not going to go into why. But there's a reason, and they're not around. So, I have tried to specify as many details that I think are required in terms of thinking up characters for the Magisterium. That is basically how they run. I do apologise, I've been rambling quite a lot. I am filming this very early on a Monday morning before I um, do an awful lot of things. I've got a very busy day, but I wanted to film this. I wanted to post this up so those interested know a bit more about the Magisterium, and hopefully it has given you an insight for those just watching in general to the way that the Magisterium functions, the way they operate, and their particular views on elements of the game, essentially. Um, so I hope you've enjoyed this, despite me rambling on and on and on and on. If you have any thoughts about the Magisterium, if you have any ideas about what kind of character you'd like to play within the shady confines of these militant, magic-hating hunters, then let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, give it a like. If you would like to see more like it, then perhaps give me a subscribe. My name's been Rob, you've been watching Performance Check, and I hope that all of your performances are up to standard. God, I want to sleep.